So I met Jen, I think 10 years ago. I believe I met you before I was even married when you came to Miami and
Yeah,
did karaoke yoga for the
you're
first
right.
time. For the first
You're
time.
right. You're right.
It's crazy. I mean,
Yeah, maybe it was 9. It was around there, 9 or 10 years.
we're a decade older. So much has changed.
Yes, really it has.
Yeah, the world is completely different also. One of the things that happened the second time around when you came back to Miami to do karaoke yoga, I was so eager to join the class because I was so inspired by you and this idea of breaking out of the yoga world. Um, Something that happened in the second class was you had us all write a love letter to ourselves from someone who loves us the most. And I had never taken the time to do that in my entire life. And so it was really this huge act of compassion and self-compassion that it was like a mega dose of it. And two of the things that I took from that experience was you came and you sat down on the front of my yoga mat and you looked at me in the eyes like a foot away from my face. And
No, probably closer.
and maybe like 2 inches. And I'm like, wow, the audacity. And then we all realize that you have a hearing disability and you read lips. And so
Hmm.
to fully understand someone and fully hear them, which your memoir talks about, you have to sit there and like actually look at their face. And so it was such a wonderful experience because in that moment of complete vulnerability, I said I am pure, which is something I didn't necessarily believe at the time because I had been through full body liposuction. I had changed my body for the modeling. Oh, that time I hadn't had full body lipo, but I had changed my body for the modeling industry for an ex-boyfriend of mine who said real women have boobs, and got implants because of it. And I just felt like unworthy of that compliment and compassion that you offered me. And for you listening to that, I'm forever grateful. So thank you for holding that powerful space and empowering space for me.
Well, you're welcome. I mean, gosh, I have so many things to say about that. The first one is I I don't I can't imagine that at the beginning of class I didn't warn everyone. What my shtick is usually, by the way, guys, I'm deaf without my hearing aids. I read lips. I'll probably come sit on your lap. But that may have come later. I may have not started doing that like, I don't know, 6 years ago. The other thing I want to say is people are usually we're not usually listening. So maybe I did say that and you just weren't listening because that people are so afraid because they're like, what is this weird workshop or what am I going to get into, that they're not like really listening. Anyway, I love that you say the audacity because it's such a which I talk so much about bullshit stories, and we do this, right? We make up stories about people, and that's one of the things that I love, why I love bringing my hearing loss to the table. And those of you watching right now, the reason I'm actually using my phone and not my computer is because it streams through my hearing aids. So this is actually way better for me than in person. But we make up stories about people. For example, like I'll go to get a coffee before COVID, and you're in line and they say, what's your name, to write it on the cup, and I don't hear them. And then they think it's because I'm an airhead or I'm not paying attention or I'm an asshole, whatever it is. And so we do it all the time. And it's such a great reminder to have compassion, which is what you ended up having for yourself. And you also said that you had never taken the time to do that in your life, write that letter. I don't think most people have. I think I made that up, although I'm sure, in the world, people have done variations of that, but I had never done it either. It's not a thing that we do, I think, to remind ourselves who we really are. But you're welcome for that. And Robert, can you please stop making noise? Real life.
Real life. Totally. I do think that you mentioned it before the class, but one of those assumptive stories in my head was that it can't be that bad because you're hosting a workshop.
Right, and because I speak, my speech is good, and I speak, I speak like a typical hearing person. And you know, it's like, also I have this mask over there that says, I have a few of them now that say, please, that say, I read lips, please be kind, or I read lips, please take off your mask. And the other day I went to the doctor and I was getting checked in, and this, you know, and I'm trying to tell him, and I'm even pointing, and he's looking at me, and finally I take it down. I say, I read lips. It says it here. And he goes, I'm looking at it and I'm not even reading it. It's just funny. It's like, it's just autopilot a lot, right? And I thought, oh, it's so true. Like, I wear this mask and most people are not even reading it.
Wow.
It's funny.
I think
but I do it too.
It's so brave of you. And unfortunately, but fortunately, you're creating this path that's so important, where it's inclusion of people with disabilities. My son has a disability. He's severely allergic to many foods and just environmental allergens. But for you to host a workshop of 75 people, 100 people, whatever it may be, maybe it's speaking about your book, and to put yourself in a situation where the world isn't set up to cater to your disability, you know, but you're like forging on and creating a path for so many people who have your disability, but also to show other people, say, hey, like, just because there's nothing set up for you, like, you can also do this too. It's going to be hard.
Thanks. You know, I'll say is like, and that came in my late 30s, you know, that, you know, years of shame. And again, I might have to write an essay about it if I ever write again, the word audacity, because this thing, I so much shame in my life. Read my book if you want to know more. We don't have the time to delve into it. But another thing that brought me great shame was my hearing loss. You know, especially before I had hearing aids, I was so ashamed and I felt broken. And of course I thought I deserved this. You know, I had a story that I was a bad person. So naturally I deserved this, and I didn't want to talk about it. And I was ashamed and I was broken, and, you know, and it was this thing I was always ashamed of, that almost, it really caused me to want to hide all the time. And now it's the thing that I lead with. So thank you for acknowledging that. But it wasn't until my late 30s. It's not like this is like, you know, this was a long time coming. And frankly, it's exhausting to not, I have to do that. Otherwise I can't even leave the house, because it's so exhausting to pretend and to try to hear and to try to get by in the world. So, and also I'm learning. I produced a workshop about a month ago, no sense of time anymore during COVID, but it was for Black Lives Matters. I wasn't in it. It was all Black teachers and Black ASL interpreters, but my friend Krista Vernoff and I and her partners produced it. And we realized at the last minute we didn't have interpreters. And it's like, how can I? Duh. But the reason is because I don't speak with ASL. You know, I'm deaf with a small d. I'm not capital D. A totally different planet, really. And I'm still learning. Like, oh, are my workshops accessible for people who are in a wheelchair? Like my one in London isn't. It's upstairs. And do I have interpreters? You know, I'm committed now for all my online workshops from now on to have interpreters. So I think we all have to get better with that, with being ableist.
Absolutely. That accountability and commitment is so important. Even for me with the show, I don't have closed captions, and Matt's mom is deaf, my husband's mom. And so for her to listen to the show, it's really hard for her to tune in. She has cochlear implants, but it's hard for her to listen. So even when I was teaching yoga and everything, it was hard for her to participate because she couldn't hear the suggestions. I know you've had, I think there was a yoga class you're in where you didn't have your hearing aids in, and you were all out of sorts and discombobulated, and you're very.
Do you mean when I was teaching, or when I was taking it? Because when I take yoga, which is not very often, honestly, I wish it was more. Actually, weirdly, during February, there's a hot yoga studio right next door to my house, which I was always like, no way. And I went and I got addicted, and then COVID hit. But my teacher was Annie Carpenter, and she moved away, and I kind of fell off my yoga practice. but most of the time I can't practice with my hearing aids in because of the sweat. And so I have to take the class deaf. And it is the most humbling, beautiful, disempowering, hard, amazing experience ever, because I have to just be with the not knowing. I have to trust my body. I have to be okay with doing something different, perhaps. I have to be okay with feeling lost, you know? So I'd say nowadays, if I do take a yoga class, especially, I mean, now maybe if there was only one person in the room, I wouldn't get so sweaty. I would maybe leave them in, but generally I have to practice without them in.
You know, it'd be really interesting for you is to host a hearing impairment awareness yoga class where everyone puts in earplugs and no one can hear. And so
that would be,
everyone's forced to really feel in their body, and maybe that's like a journaling exercise in themselves, like what comes up when you're very vulnerable and disempowered.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
I would be interested in taking that just because I'm interested in empathizing with how other people experience the world.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important that we all tell our stories and tell the truth and share. So for me, it's like, I used to be so ashamed about this thing and in denial. That was the big thing. I was in denial, which is still something I struggle with in my life as a theme. But I was in such denial. And so now I'm just really upfront about it. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean I'm bad or broken or I deserve this, or it just means I don't hear well and I can't hear without my hearing aids. And in hopes that other people will then share what's going on with them. What do you need? Mm-hmm. What's life like for you?
For someone with a disability, let's say for your 20-year-old self or 25-year-old self, and felt like, you know, of the world and you couldn't talk about your hearing loss, what would you tell them to help them get out of that like dark place? Is there like any action or advice you'd give?
You are not broken. You know, I say that to myself all the time. I'm not broken. And you know, it's the same. I did a post yesterday about weight. It's like, this has nothing to do with your value, your worth. This doesn't mean that you are less than, you know. My favorite words are, it's going to be okay. That's probably what I would say to myself. I think, you know, my father died so young at 38. And so for me, 38 was always the age of death. And I think a big part of my denial and various feelings around it was fear. And so just the constant fear of like, I'm going to go fully deaf and be alone in the world, and it's going to be dark, and everything was fear. And so if I can go back and say, it's going to be okay. Because if I could see myself then 25 years later and going, look at me now. Is it perfect? No. Does it suck sometimes? Yes. Do I get frustrated still? Yes. And yet, it's beautiful. You know, it doesn't mean that I don't have a hard time. It doesn't mean that I have tinnitus. It doesn't suck. It just means that it's okay. And there is a great power in acceptance, you know, in not being in denial. Once I was like, okay, I really do have profound hearing loss and I can't fucking hear. There's such a power in that now. Absolutely. And people have asked me I remember this woman at a retreat a couple of years. She was like, I don't understand. How could you have been in denial about your hearing loss? And that's another thing I want to write about. It's quite easy, especially, you know, I have a friend who just lost his legs and we had this talk. It's like, he can't be in denial. His legs he lost his legs in an accident last August at once. There's no in denial about that. When you have something incrementally happening to you every day, it's quite easy. And anyone who's had an addiction or anything knows how easy it is to be in denial. and also it's gotten progressively worse. So when I was 20, it was not nearly as bad as it is now. It was constantly like, oh no, I'm just congested, or I have a cold. That came out of my mouth all the time. My friends had to have an intervention with me one day. I was bawling. Maybe I was like 27 at the time, bawling. And they're like, we'll go with you to the audiologist. I still didn't go. So, when you're ready, you're ready. And I can only hope that people, when they're younger, start to realize that these things don't mean that you're a bad person or you're broken or your life won't be fulfilling. Whatever it is.
One of the things that I would say has like come about more recently in your career, not only with your book on being human, but in your life, is that you've been an incredible advocate. You've always been an incredible advocate, but an incredible advocate for people who need additional resources during COVID and for Black Lives Matters. And so I'm really interested in that personally, because it's so inspiring. Everyone who follows you knows that you have limited resources, that you don't live in like a white picket fence.
I can't wait. I gotta tell you, I can't wait to the day where I got a big ass house, because everyone's gonna be cheering for me.
Yes,
like,
yes, 100%. And you will.
And to be clear for people watching, I do well. I'm not, I'm not poor, but I live in Santa Monica. It's really expensive. I've lived in this rent control apartment. I can't say how much it is because people will want to kill me. Let's just say it's practically free. It's 1 bedroom. It's 9 blocks from the beach. And it's like, I've stayed, and I absolutely couldn't afford to move right now, but it's not like I make sacrifices for the lifestyle I have and for where I live. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally know what you mean. That being said, you have raised over $145,000 for other people before even putting your book business first. You have a paperback coming out, and you had this whole—
It came out. I postponed the book tour. Yeah.
When you had the paperback coming out, though, you postponed your book tour, and you literally selflessly said, like, I have enough in a way, and there are people that need more, and I'm better suited to be doing this project right now to like give more. And what I'm really personally interested in is where that comes from, that motivation to give beyond selflessly to people of need.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm selfless. I'm an asshole like everyone else. We're all assholes sometimes, right? I'm certainly not like I can always do better. I know that years ago my life changed. That's very well. I've talked about it, and Sky Dyer, but Wayne Dyer really changed my life with these words, "How may I serve?" And I committed my life to living that way many years ago. And it's not like I'm taking away from my family necessarily to like feed other people, but what I have and what I'm particularly good at, and what I'm clear that I'm good at, is cultivating community and space. And I've always been good at that. I'm not good at very many things in life. What I'm good at, I'm really good at. And I stand by that. So I've created this space online and in real life. And what I realize I can do with that is generate love and money for other people, and use it to raise awareness, to raise funds, to amplify Black voices, to amplify businesses that need it, to share books. And it just feels natural to me, and that's another thing Wayne would always say. It's like, does it feel natural to you? That's what feels natural to me. It didn't feel right to me. I was scheduled to have this big virtual book tour, and after I'd raised all this money, which I'll get back to in a second, and then the revolution happened. Black Lives Matters. And I was like, I can't right now. It just doesn't feel right. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't ask my publisher. I didn't converse with any of my friends. I just did a post and said, it's postponed. Because I thought what needs to happen right now is we need to be listening to Black voices. We don't need me right now. I'm not saying like I'm not important or woe is me. It's just like now's not the right time. And I was clear on that in my body. As far as raising money for other people, you know, I have a particular gift that money rains down on me. And that is why I know that I will always be okay in life. What I mean by that is like, the other day, for example, this indigenous man, this lovely man, a water protector named Ernesto, who's like protested at Standing Rock. He has 3 children. One of them's disabled. His wife was a nurse on the COVID front lines and she died. And I put his PayPal and people donated thousands of dollars, and I put my Venmo because some people, it's easier just to Venmo me.
Yeah.
I was able to send him like $6,000 in 2 days. And so I can make it rain money for other people. So I do. And I did a post on my Instagram at the beginning of the pandemic saying, do you have enough food to eat? And the reason I asked that wasn't because I thought I would be able to provide other people with groceries. It was because I knew that this community, people would step in, and they did. Like, so someone was like, I lost my job, I have no money. Someone else stepped in and said, let me send you Instacart, you know. And then one of my followers I still hadn't met, said, can I start you a GoFundMe? This would be easier. And then it was game over. GoFundMe got created. And I did one online workshop on Instagram that raised maybe 10, 12,000. Then I started doing Instagram lives, predominantly with celebrities. And the point being is they would share it with their followers to drive donations. And we raised like $140,000. And we still have a chunk of money left over. We're trying to figure out where to put that. But all the people that applied, we gave them $100 to get groceries. And it's not like a $10,000 grant. The idea of $100 was a gesture, really. It's like my tattoo of I got you. And, you know, hope and a sense of community, because there's no way that we can, like, you know, become a weekly like grocery cart for someone. But yeah, it was really incredible. And I did it through my Instagram lives.
So empowering and so inspiring. It was so touched by you giving your time so generously to organize all of that and really dive into advocating and supporting the community, whether it was COVID or Black Lives Matter. And it was very educational for me with all of your takeovers and sharing the mic, etc. So thank you.
I'm glad you say that, because I'll tell you what, I have learned so much in these last few months, and it's mind blowing. I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm back in school, because, you know, all the different people that I talked to, I was just constantly learning. I was getting this education and meeting all these new friends. I developed these friendships. I mean, it was really, I got so much out of it. And yes, it was exhausting, but it was so beautiful and rewarding. And, you know, the tough thing is, like, no matter what, there's always going to be more people that need help. So there's also self-care in there, and you have to find a way to have boundaries, which the self-care thing, I sort of let go of, and I paid the price for it. I'm dealing with all this medical stuff right now, gallstones and whatnot. And part of that is because I was drinking too much, and that didn't cause the gallstones, but it didn't help, you know. But for me, it feels really natural, and it's what I love to do. And my whole life I've felt called to, if I'm able to lend, if you want to call it a helping hand, or I got you. I mean, I have that tattoo, but that is my goal, is to be the embodiment of that when I walk in a room. It doesn't mean I could save everyone. Sometimes it just means I'm listening to someone, like you said, like getting really close and listening. Sometimes it means I'm able to send them money. Sometimes it means I'm able to amplify, you know, something for them on my social media account or whatever.
What would you say is one of the bravest things that you've ever done?
Wow. Did you say bravest?
Bravest.
Oh, I thought you said greatest. I was like, wow. I mean, I want to say have my son because God, there's a lot actually, but because I was so terrified to have a child, you know, having lost my dad that young and having made up these decisions about myself that I was a bad person. And that comes from, you know, me telling my dad, I hate you, and then him dropping dad at 8, you know, I adopted this belief. And then just the sheer terror of, I didn't think I wanted a child. So having him, I mean, that sort of feels like the easy answer, but maybe not. You know, I don't know. I mean, it's hard. I feel like I've done a lot of brave things, but one of them is definitely, you know, I remember in October 1st, I did a workshop with Liz Gilbert in Philadelphia, and once we started, it was fine. But I remember, like, before, it's like, wow, imposter syndrome is so large. And yet I went and I did it. And the minute I was there was not 1 ounce of me that felt like I am less than, or wow, I am not worthy to be here. And, but I went through with it. I did it anyway. I was afraid and I did it anyway. You know, gosh, there's a lot. Get me started. Another, I think, brave thing is being so vulnerable on the awful internet, you know, about how I live, because there's judgments, and yeah, I don't care, you know, what are you gonna do? But to really put myself out there, like, this is my home, this is how I live, this is who I am, because people have stories of, you know, if you're successful, then why don't you have X, Y, or Z? Mm-hmm. Yesterday I did a post, there was this awful video that was going around, this woman, this racist woman using the N-word. Oh. And then she was in her garage and she pointed to her Range Rover. She goes, yeah, I have a Range Rover. You know why? Because I work hard. And I got really angry. And I thought, fuck you. I work hard. I work really hard. And so there's this notion, I think, like, that belief is really strong in people. It's, you know, and that's bootstraps mentality. And that's, it's just bullshit. It's, yeah, I work really hard, and no one knows your situation. No one knows how many people I'm supporting or what's going on in my life. It's like, well, it's a why I live in a small apartment. And it's easy, I think, to make up stories, though, to go, well, they're just not working hard, because of narratives like that.
There's a lot of these privilege postings on social media that can be so damaging, unbeknownst to the people posting it, you know, to show their perfect life, or how hard they work, or how great their job is, or how successful they are. And it was interesting because I follow you, like, all the time, and you're like the #1 person that pops up in my feed, so I assume I'm like your top fan. Instagram has marked you as like my #1 resource page, which is great because you always feed me the best information. And when you posted that, I immediately another post popped up on my Instagram of 2 Range Rovers, white and black, and 2 girlfriends with their Prada shoes matching their cars, white and black. And they're friends of mine. And it just jolted me, because just like Black Lives Matter and the awareness we're creating through it, and the education that's coming with the whole revolution and movement, it's like this idea of privilege is damaging almost. And
well, yeah. And I mean, look, you know, when I started, when you met me, my workshop was called the Manifestation Workshop, and Wayne Dyer really got me into this idea of manifesting. And 10 years ago, I said a lot of different things that I wouldn't say now. You know, there was a meme a couple of years ago, and I share it every so often. I don't know who created it, but it says, maybe you manifested it, or maybe it was white privilege. And these are things 10 years ago that that weren't even, you know, floating around in my brain. And now, look, the fact is white privilege. Like, we have never been followed around in a store because of our skin color. We have never, been pulled over simply because of our skin color or denied a mortgage. That's white privilege. It's not saying that like I grew up with money, because I didn't, or my family has money, because they don't. But if we're white, we have white privilege. And as far as the other kind of privilege, like that woman that made that comment, you know, the I work hard and that's why I have this. Well, and another part I read was that she went and spent with her dad's credit card like thousands of dollars. And I thought, you know, I can't think of many people like me. Like there's no land in my family. No one owns a home. There's no, you know, there's nothing, zero. And there was a time where I used to get really resentful of that. I looked at all my friends and I thought, my God, like God forbid if anything were to happen, I don't have anyone to bail me out except my community. And so yes, I think a lot of that narrative of like, I work, that's not to say some people don't work really hard and make a lot of money. Great. And I also think that we don't have to hide that or be ashamed of our success, but to equate that the only way that you get things is by working hard is false. And yeah. And I've been saying this for years, is I don't think we need as much as we are convinced that we need, or that the internet tells us we need. So I'm like, look, I live in this 1-bedroom apartment. It's fine. Would I like another bedroom? Hell yes. But the truth is we don't need as much as we are sold to believe. And I stand by that. We just don't. We need love. We need water. We need air. We need food. You know, but we don't need all the Range Rovers. It's fine if you have one. I'm certainly not judging you. I'd like one. My Hyundai is a 2005, but you don't need it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's funny though, last night I woke up from a really weird dream. I don't know why. And my old childhood friends, Jen and Shauna, were in it, and we were going all these places, and the last place we were was China. And my friend Shauna went into first class, and my friend Jen and I were not. And I started having a panic attack, and it was this long row. It looked like a spaceship. It was like 50 people in a row. We were dead in the center, and it was coach. And I started having, and it's not like I fly internationally first class, my friends, but one day I would like to, I'll say that. And I started having this panic attack, and I mean like full on panic attack. And I woke up and I thought, okay, that's at the top of my list. I just want to be able to fly like with a bed if we ever fly again. Even before I have another car, I woke up with that clarity. But that's really for comfort. But who knows if we're ever going to fly again? I don't know. You know, everything is right now about, I think, embracing the unknown and walking into it.
Yeah. I agree. It's completely unknown, and that that getting comfortable with that uncomfortable feeling is so important right now.
Yeah, it's really hard. And that's why right before we started, I told you I've been taking Xanax, which, you know, I'd like to stop soon, but I started having a lot of anxiety at the beginning of the pandemic. My whole income went, you know, and I had 3 Europe retreats this year, 3, and they're all canceled. And you know, and I love what I do. I love. And so there's like a depression because I miss it. And there's also the money, and there's also the, like, is it ever going to happen again? And there's just so much.
Yeah.
And like the reinvention, like when, you know, I've done one online class last Sunday, and it actually paid me well, but it's not the same. I don't have the same joy.
Right.
I wouldn't mind keeping on because it is lucrative compared to like, you know, flying, but like, oh God, to be in France with this group of amazing women, take me back.
I know. I go through your flashback photos and I'm like, oh my gosh, Italy and Charlie.
It hurts.
It
hurts. It hurts because I said to my mom, I was feeling sorry for myself. I was with her this weekend. I go, well, I had a good run. She's like, don't say that. Your run isn't over. But I just, you know, I don't know. It's been tough, you know, and everyone's affected, and everyone's affected in different ways.
Yeah.
And my career weirdly was traveling and being in groups of people. It was everything that's completely shut down by COVID.
Well, everyone's still going to crave that. And I know that you're going to be the first person that they're looking to when it comes to conscious traveling and self-care and growth. So I have lots of hope and just sending all my love to you and supporting you any way I can. And I hope to be
Thank you.
I hope to be on one of your first retreats when you leave the country again.
Yeah, you know, I haven't fully pulled the plug on Italy the last week of September. I mean, I'm going to, but it's, yeah. And I mean, there's so many, in fact, if we had more time, I would read a section in my book about what brave is. I wrote like how brave can look like so many things. I think this is such a beautiful thing you're doing, these brave talks, because the truth is sometimes, like for me, it's brave that I even get out of bed. I really struggle with depression, and it's really flared up during this time. And so like there's so many ways that brave looks, and I don't know for me if there's a such thing as the bravest, but I love that you're doing this, and I love this question. And this is brave. This is brave of you.
Thank you.
So yeah, maybe I'll keep being brave during this time.
There's a book called The Courage Quotient. Have you read it or heard of it?
No.
So the Courage Quotient talks about how bravery and courage isn't awarded in our culture and in many cultures around the globe, and how bravery, 80% of us assume it to be running into a burning building to save a baby. But in reality, bravery can also be following through on a project. It can be getting out of bed in the morning. It could be so many things, and they're all equal, but different. And so to recognize that you're just being brave by getting up in the morning is a huge step. I don't even think it's a baby step, especially right now as we're filming during COVID and quarantine and all the protests happening. It's just so important to acknowledge that and have compassion for ourselves and the awareness that though it may be small, it's still a large act of courage.
Yeah, and you know, some days I don't get out of bed. Like yesterday, I kind of laid in bed all day in my underwear. So,
I want your life. What?
well, you don't. I mean, no, no, because but it wasn't. It's not with. It wasn't like necessarily with pleasure. It's an inertia. It was a depression. You know, it's a feeling stuck. So, yeah, and also, you know, I have a 4-year-old. You have a one. Is he 1?
He's almost 2.
Oh, geez. Yeah. And so I've been a real shitty mom lately, and just like let him have the phone, and he's looking at that for 11 hours. So no, you know, it's yeah, brave is a really interesting word. And I have a friend, Emily Rapp, and she used to say, like, you know, because she teaches writing, and people would like write something, and someone would say, that's so brave. And she would say, it's not brave. Brave is like walking, you know, through a village with like water on your head. You have no water, and you're giving like your child water. It's everyone defines brave in a different way. I think one of the bravest things we can do is be okay with who we are in the world, and just not try to change to fit other people or expectations or standards. I really, really believe that. And I do think that's why that people resonate with me, because most of the time, there's still times where I don't feel brave, but most of the time I live my life that way. And people are drawn to that. And if we would remember that more, instead of trying to hide or make pretend.
Thank you so much for being you and having the audacity to be you and to live loud and bravely. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on Brave Talks, Jen. I love you.
Thank you. I love you too. Thank you.
Bye.